Welcome to another episode of You Left Shit Out. I'm your host, Compton J. Make sure you like this stream. Make sure you share it on all different types of platforms. Also, subscribe to us. We were trying to reach 15,000 by April 1st. So it is a very doable goal. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Tell your friends about us. Tell your families about us. So now let's get into today's topic. So Aaron Monte went on the Jimmy Dore show for one of his streams. And, of course, they're talking about Ukraine and different aspects of Ukraine. But this is one of them, which is the video where Joe Biden predicted 25 years ago about this particular Ukraine-Russia conflict. So let's listen here.
Joe Biden. Now, we've showed you time and time again, every expert on the Ukraine situation has predicted for not only a few years, but for decades, that what is happening right now would happen if the United States and NATO kept doing what they're doing, which is expanding and overthrowing Ukraine's government. Here's Joe Biden. Now he's going to tell you. So everybody's, again, this is the part that no one's reporting in the news, even on YouTube. So it's the how we got here. No one ever talks about how we got here. So here we go.
I think the one place where the greatest consternation would be caused in the short term for admission, having nothing to do with...
He's talking about admitting states in Eastern Europe into NATO. What we promised to Russia when Germany reunified, the United States and NATO promised to Russia that we would not expand NATO 1 inch, and then we went and expanded it everywhere. Poland, everywhere. And
you know what I hate when people say, "Oh, America promised," and your response is, "It wasn't in writing." Are you a swindler? So you're telling me out of your mouth that, hey, we're not doing this. I have to get that in writing. That's what the United States is saying, and that's what some Americans take on it. It's interwoven in even our understanding of everything. This way of this sort of corruption. But anyway, let's get back to this video. Here we go.
And then we're trying to get, and he's going to bring up Ukraine. And so watch it. I think we added 11 countries. We added a shit ton of countries, and we said we weren't going to do it. Do you know how many we added, Aaron?
Not at the top of my head.
Not at the top of your head. Okay, so that's what he's talking about, adding Ukraine to NATO. Here we go.
I think the one place where the greatest consternation would be caused in the short term for admission, having nothing to do with the merit and preparedness of the country to come in, would be to admit the Baltic states now in terms of...
So he just said, notwithstanding the merits, meaning not based on any sort of criteria that they've met, accepting the Baltic states, which Ukraine is one of, into NATO.
NATO-Russian, U.S.-Russian relations. And if there was ever anything that was going to tip the balance, were it to be tipped in terms of a vigorous and hostile reaction, I don't mean military.
That's us. That's him talking about instigating something in terms of what we can do to push Russia the most, to instigate this situation the most, is to let in Baltic states into NATO. This is 1997.
In Russia, it would be that. So the way I look at the calculus here...
What?
Does that sound like a country spreading democracy and peace and fighting for freedom? You're strategizing on how to instigate military reaction from Russia. Now, this same person who's saying this is now the president. I mean, it's like you couldn't make this shit up. And the thing about social media and the internet, and I think Obama had said something about the internet. The internet is going to be the end of democracy. End of the democracy, how they know. Because we're able to pull up videos like this with the internet and quickly share them across the world about the bullshit. So let's continue.
What? So let me bring in Aaron Mate from mate.substack.com. Could you please react to that? Because my jaw was on the floor when I watched that.
So he's speaking in 1997, and he says that if the U.S. admits the NATO, the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, that Russia would have a harsh reaction, and that would be the tipping point. And he's saying that in 1997, and that's exactly what the U.S. went and had and supported under George W. Bush in 2004 when they admitted those 3 Baltic states. And that did indeed really anger Russia and make it start being very, very clear that this has to stop. You cannot keep expanding your hostile military alliance to our borders, because that's what the move with the Baltic states did. And what did the U.S. do in response? 4 years later, it promised NATO membership to Georgia and Ukraine. Ukraine especially being
Georgia,
the biggest sore spot, because it's right there on Russia's border, and it shares a huge history and cultural and family ties. Millions of people in both countries have family across the border. Millions of Ukrainians speak Russian, identify as ethnic Russian. So, and even George W. Bush's own aides, including Fiona Hill, who's now a regular on cable news, she was warning him against it. But the Bush administration overruled that, and successive administrations have, instead of backing off of that, have essentially continued the policy to the point where Joe Biden comes now into power.
Right.
And instead of agreeing to Russia's demand to agree to Ukrainian neutrality, Joe Biden said, let's have a war. That essentially was Joe Biden's decision when he was the president. Back when he was a senator, he was warning exactly of the outcome that he's now confronting.
Again, it drives me crazy to no end that I know this. That somehow I found this out. I found this out. I'm not supposed to know this stuff. I'm supposed to disbelieve this stuff. I'm not even supposed to hear about it. But somehow, if I know it, that tells me that all the smarty pants people know this too, and they're just ignoring it, and they're going along. Why? Because it's easier to go along. I got rent. I got kids in college. It's hard to go tell you the truth. And here's
it's crazy.
Go ahead.
The people who are saying this now are people like us, who are, leftist media personalities, people on YouTube. I'm at the gray zone, relatively on the margins. That shows how right-wing this country has become when it comes to militarism, because back when Joe Biden was talking about this in 1997, he was joined by people like George Kennan, one of the most eminent U.S. diplomats, Robert McNamara, the former defense secretary, many prominent people warning of exactly the same outcome, that if the U.S. kept expanding NATO to Russia's borders, it would be catastrophe. But the problem was, at that time, the same time as Joe Biden was speaking here, there was an intense lobbying operation, one of the most expensive lobbying operations in U.S. history, from the arms industry.
Intense lobbying campaign from the arm industries. So let me share this article. So I'm just piggybacking off the article that he mentions, or the topic of, at the time this is happening, there's some people saying, no, let's not go with this strategy. I guess he's saying, but the intense lobbying arm of the arms industry wanted war. Here's an article, literally the first article. So a lot of this stuff is not hard to find. Okay. And who is this? This is truthout.org. Arms industry seeks Ukraine conflict as opportunity, not crisis. This is from now, and I stumbled on this, not even thinking this. I'm looking at trying to find old articles. Let me just backtrack. I'm trying to find old articles. Look what I typed in here. Specifically looking for older articles. And here goes one here. I'll click on this next. But look at what I just happened to stumble upon now. Arm industry seeks Ukraine conflict as opportunities, or sees Ukraine conflict as opportunity, not crisis.
Who stood to make billions of dollars if the U.S. would expand NATO, because it would open up all these new weapons markets. And that's who won out. And even though William Burns, who's the current director of the CIA, back when he was the ambassador to Russia under Bush, he wrote a cable put up by Wiki.
I mean, think about that. Does that not prove that the military-industrial complex needs to be abolished? Where they're looking to expand NATO, not as some sort of defense, not as some sort of spreading democracy or freedom. They're looking at it because then it opens up more markets to sell arms, military equipment. And guess when more countries are added to NATO, guess who gets first dibs on selling that newly added country to NATO arms? The United States. So essentially, we're expanding NATO. We're doing these conflicts to drum up a reason to sell military equipment. The military-industrial complex, the fossil fuel industry, and big pharma are what's killing the planet and all of us. It is no value in human life that you're just making up conflicts so that you're able to sell military equipment. Think about that.